Ramp Power, as told in Appalachian Ghost Stories and Other Tales by James Gay Jones. Uncle Lige Morris was well known for his high regard for the truth. Always judicious and circumspect in his speaking, he maintained a reputation throughout a long lifetime for reasonableness of thought and credibility, with one exception that defied his sincerity and made him uncomfortable to think about as long as he lived. The story he brought back from a trip through the ramp country in the central Alleghenies was so out of character for him to relate that his friends wanted some time to think about it before accepting it as fact, an act which Uncle Lige never forgot, nor forgave. It was in early April in 1905, while in the prime of his life, that Lige mounted his best saddle horse and rode across the Alleghenies to visit relatives in Greenbrier County. The trip over was uneventful. However, on his return, in an effort to follow a shortcut, he became confused and for some time wandered futilely through dense woodlands. Darkness came, and, because of the danger of being struck by low-hanging tree limbs, he had to dismount and lead his horse. The trail soon became so steep and uneven, he felt it to be too hazardous to walk in front of his horse, so he gave his steed free rein, while he walked behind and held on to its tail. At length they came out in a clearing on the mountainside, where a large 2-story log house loomed up a short distance ahead. It was here in this house that Lige found lodging for the night, a night which he wished many times later, for peace of mind, he had never known. As Lige lay in a comfortable bed in a room adjoining the living room, he could only reflect in amazement at the rapidity of events that had transpired since his arrival here. In only a few minutes' time, his horse had been stabled and fed, he himself had been given food and drink, and then he had been peremptorily ordered to bed. Throughout this time, other than revealing that his name was Sol Jenkins, his host had been practically uncommunicative. He could now hear him puttering about in the kitchen and occasionally muttering to himself. Despite his peculiar situation, Lige, bone-tired and weary from his trip, soon drifted off to sleep. Sometime later in the night he awoke to the pungent odor of cooked ramps, which nearly overwhelmed him. His bedroom door was slightly ajar, and on looking out, he saw 2 wizened old men with bushy white hair and unusually long beards sitting before the fireplace and engaged in an animated conversation. They talked in hoarse whispers, often punctuated with high-pitched whistling noises. On a table between them there were 2 stoneware mugs, from which they occasionally took long draughts with gusto. After a time, their conversation gradually subsided, and then all was quiet again. The old men had fallen asleep in their chairs. Then Lige saw his host come in and pick up the men, one under each arm, and with their long beards dragging on the floor, carry them upstairs. The next morning when Lige arose, he found his breakfast already prepared. He noticed, too, that his horse was saddled and ready for him at the front gate. So with haste he made his departure, and felt a great sense of relief once he was on his way again. About 2 miles down the mountainside, Lige came to another house where a man was in the woodlot cutting firewood. Here he learned more about the old men. The woodcutter informed him that Sol Jenkins was the son of one of the aged men and the grandson of the other. The 2 old men slept upstairs, remaining in a coma until the arrival of mid-April each year. Shortly after the stroke of midnight on April 15th, they aroused themselves from their long sleep, came down to their chairs before the living room fireplace, and, while drinking ramp juice, talked about their experiences of earlier years. The older one often spoke of the time he spent as a Virginia militiaman at the Battle of Point Pleasant in 1774, while the other liked to tell of his exploits while serving under the command of Mad Anthony Wayne. On the basis of these claims, the older one was at least 150 years old, and his son was close to 130. Lige could only stare in disbelief when he was told that Sol, who appeared to be in his early 60s, was actually approaching the age of 100. Moreover, it could be expected that he, too, would soon join his father and grandfather in the long sleep. "Why do they sleep so much and live so long?" Lige asked. "Some people say it's the ramp juice," the woodcutter replied. "They tell me those old men are so saturated in ramp juice they can't stay awake, and so well preserved they can't die. But I say there's more to it than ramp juice. I think they've sold their souls to the devil. And who will take care of them when soul joins them in the long sleep? Well, I'm not waiting around to see. As soon as the roads are fit, I'm moving my family off this mountain. I tell you, there's something diabolical going on up there. When Leach returned home and related this experience to his friends, its reception was so poor he never mentioned it again. But each year when springtime came, and the people began to talk about and prepare for ramp dinners, that faraway look would come into his eyes, and everyone knew he was wondering about the fate of the 3 old men in the mountains.